Hey guys, welcome back to Young and Unscripted. We are really excited to announce our next special guest on the podcast, Stephen Kavuma, who is an incredible writer and director. Stephen, hello, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yes, how are you feeling today?
Feeling good. Excited to have this chat.
Conversation,
Yeah.
yeah. So to start, could you just give us a bit of a background about yourself? Let the viewers know who you are and what you do. That'd be great.
Yeah, certainly. I'm a writer and director. I was born in Uganda and I grew up in Wales. I was raised in Wales, and that is pretty much me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How was it growing up in Wales and then obviously moving, I guess, to London? How was that?
It had its ups and downs. Like, it was really beautiful, but also really, uncomfortable at times.
Okay.
My family and I, we were the only black people on our street. My siblings and I, we were the only black kids in our school. So it brought up a lot of conversations around identity and around like, where do I belong and who do I belong with, and kind of questions about who I am. And at that age, it was really unescapable. You couldn't really, because it was so direct. And then when I moved to London, it was sort of weird because I saw black kids who looked like me, but who didn't necessarily speak like me and weren't like aware that black kids in Wales existed. And so there was that dimension of like learning about, who we are as black people, and the, we're not all the same, that we look alike, or we may have similar features, that we're not all the same. And that brought more conversations or thoughts around my identity in terms of, who am I? Am I too black? Am I too white? Am I this? What? All of those questions about where do I stand, which again was just like, unescapable at that age. But yeah.
Yeah, would you say that influenced your storytelling in any way? And is that why you maybe wanted to get into writing, to kind of have your own narrative? What was that sort of journey like?
Yeah, definitely. I really think it did. I'm looking back when I was a kid. I started writing when I was about 6, 7. Wow. Writing was my thing.
That's amazing. That's very young.
It was just my thing that I enjoyed. I wasn't great at other things in class. Like, my siblings were much smarter than me and could really do things that I couldn't do, and were always high graders. And in school, I was really struggling. My parents didn't know. Also in school, I didn't like going to school because I was confronted with my race. So there was that going on for me, but I didn't know how to have that discussion with my parents because my siblings were doing so well. So why aren't I? So it always felt like it was a me thing. And in school, I never enjoyed it. And then I started writing just to escape, really, and just to like make characters and to have fun and to imagine new worlds where I existed, or where I'd create different imaginations. And my parents read it and they were like, "Oh my god, this is
actually really good."
It's actually really good. It was really good. And I remember like thinking, this is something I really kind of want to do. So the idea of storytelling has always been with me since I was a kid. And I think the more my experiences or my identity have made me more passionate about specific stories or specific storytelling that I want to tell.
Yeah. So what sort of stories would you say that you try to push? Like, what sort of narratives do you like to tell?
I'm very interested in plays or writings about race and identity. I feel like we still haven't really opened, the whole discussion around race and racial identity, actually.
No, definitely.
So I'm very, very much interested in that. When I was at drama school, I wrote my dissertation around the performativity of blackness and how, just like gender, race can also be performed. And I think now we're seeing kind of like white people take on, black mannerism or like black memes and ways of like black language in terms of going, they can do that. So, so that just became an interest in me. And I like to write stories about the human condition. I'm very passionate about writing stories about people and exploring that. I think that's at the nature, like at the heart of all my work is, you know, exploring the human condition and who we are as people, whether we're black, white, whatever, or, you know, it's about us.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting that you talk about these plays not necessarily being shown as much, because obviously I know that For Black Boys just had an incredible run, but that was really one of the first times that a play like that had been performed and had that reception. So many people watched it, including myself, and I was just in awe of it, and it was just so incredible. I loved it. I will forever go on about that play. It was such an incredible play. So you talked about obviously going to drama school and you went to Royal Central, correct? Yeah. How was that experience for you?
It was a mixture. Like, I was excited to go to Central. Obviously, I went to City and Eastern College and I studied performing arts, and I wanted to be an actor.
Okay.
And I think in the second year, my teacher like shown us this like triangle, this like in terms of the structure of the industry and who has power and who doesn't, and we're starting to look at the business of acting, and right at the bottom was the actor. So I made at that age I was really interested in, like, you know, being in stories that were about us and like dictating who is around the table and who gets to say it, doing things. So it didn't sit right with me, and it made me really question, like, what do I really want to do after college? So I said to my teacher, I want to, you know, change and do writing and directing. I've always written, but I hadn't directed at that point. Like, I hadn't followed that through. So he was a bit like, what the hell?
Yeah, this is quite last minute.
You know, you've done 2 years of an acting course, like,
and now you want to direct.
Now you want to direct. It was like, what's going on? Like, he kept on saying all these things, and I was just like, I know, write down. You know, when you know, you know. And I went to Central and I got in, and it was very hard to get in.
Very competitive
competitive school. And when I got in, I had this feeling of, oh my God, like, I made it. And I was on a high. And then I think the reality of being at Central kicked in, and at that time, my identity was still like unescapable. Again, similar to being in Wales and similar to being in primary school in London, was that my race and my blackness was very I don't know, a big way
the forefront.
The forefront.
Predominantly white, or what was it like?
It was Central it was at the time a really white school. I think they've changed now and become more diverse. But you know, there were 90 students on my course, and I was the only black male on my course. So out of 90 students, I think there were about 7, 8 black girls, and that tells you kind of what it was. There were very few. There was very few of us, and it was just weird, and I didn't like that I was the only one. It didn't, you know. Some people go, "Oh my God, I made it! I was the lucky one. I was chosen," and I wasn't kind of, you know, brought up in that way. You know, my dad and my parents and my mum brought me up in the way, if you're eating, we're all eating. You know, we have to be around. Do you know what I mean? It's not about me being the only one here. You know, and I just wanted to have more people that looked like me around the school that I really loved. And I started campaigning and like demanding the school to change, and we did all sorts of stuff, because at the time I also was in the student union, so I had more of a direct impact in terms of like what the school was doing and who the school was catering for. And I made a big push for the school to like diversify its outreach in terms of schools and where it's going, and marketing, and you know, there was some crazy stuff. Like, I remember when I was applying for the school and I was going through the like handbook of the whole school, and like in the pictures there were like very few black people.
Yeah.
And it's like these are the things that tell you straight away if this place is for me.
Yeah, and I guess for, as you said, like for prospective students, they start looking at it and be like, oh, I'm not in here, so I can't go here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Reflected in
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
really sad, actually.
Yeah,
It is,
exactly.
yeah.
It was. I don't remember counting how many, people of color were in that handbook, and it was really sad. Those are the small little things that tell you this place isn't catering for you or isn't trying to cater for you or people who look like you. And I'm really proud of the work that myself and my friends did at the time, and we set up this campaign, the Diversity School Initiative, to demand more change for drama schools. And it was hard and it was long, but the change that happened, the change that we pushed for, is now the change that we're seeing, where it's not like,
amazing.
it is, and it's not like, the only black person there. It's like there's a handful of us and we're taking up space, and it's beautiful to watch.
Yeah. So how did that work? Was it just kind of you and your friends getting together and thinking, oh, we need to change this, we want to see the change that we need to demand?
Yeah.
Or was it just kind of you speaking to the people in authority at the school? How did it work?
It was, so at the time I did this event at Central called Dear White People.
Yeah.
It was like, I remember this was just like mad. Like everybody was saying, what are you doing, Stephen? There were like students who didn't want to like chat to me, sit with me. They isolated themselves from me because they thought I was racist.
You always think you're making a huge fuss out of
know,
nothing.
yeah,
Like,
no,
this is not
like,
nothing.
people who were saying, what about dear black people? And it's like,
You have no idea.
You have no idea. So, we called this event Dear White People, and we had, it was at Central, and we had like testimonies of all students of colour who have experienced racism being at Central, and those testimonies were read out by actors. And then we had a panel of like industry people, like so many industry people who were there, like Madna Yunus, who ran the Bush at the time. We had Kavuma Smith, who's an actor, and lots of different industry people as well, kind of chatting about what do we need to do. And then when the event finished, it kind of felt like this, like, there was this moment of like, we did this thing and that's it. And actually it felt like, that was just one thing, and we could do something else. And I went to Central, as said, this thing's finished. Like, what happens now? And they were basically like, cool, thank you, but we don't think there's a problem. But thanks for doing the event. It was a good turnout, and it was like goodbye. And then I messaged my friends Mame and Mumba, and I just messaged them and I said, look, I think we need to do something. I think this can't be it.
Yeah.
And then we created this company, and this initiative that was like to hold schools accountable for, failing to be diverse. And we worked with different drama schools around the UK, and it was student-centered at first, and then it became about policy, and how do we influence, the policy at the schools to change. So really making sure that the funding goes to schools that they need to outreach, and making sure that there are specific roles that are supporting black students, disabled students, students from working class backgrounds, like making sure that there is real people at the ground doing that. And that for me was, because like you can make a fuss and you can, do all the good stuff, but like it's policy, right? It's what's written and it's like where the money's going and who is signing off that change that kind of makes sense.
That's amazing. And so how have you found it then, going from your uni life to then transitioning into it being your actual career? How did you find racism in that respect? Because now obviously you're in the industry. How has that worked?
It's, it's really weird because like when I built a career where like it was sort of like, it felt like people couldn't fuck with me because of like the
What
company
you've
and
done.
initiative and what I'd done.
Yeah.
So it felt like I was fortunate in that sense that there wasn't direct instance to me, because it also felt like I could call that out. And I was able to
because
because I had the power to do so. I had the platform to do so. I had the following and backing to do so. So it became hard. I did notice it around my friends and it happening to my people. And that's when I was like, this ain't fair. This is not how we should be treated. And then that conversation around who comes to see plays. So whenever I was like working in a theatre, I was making sure that the audience was diverse and like we were going to the right people, like, because there's this whole myth that black people don't come to the theatre, and it's like that's not true. Or like black people don't have money, and it's like we do. You're just not catering for us, or you're not coming to us and telling us where to go. So that became a big thing for me, and also like being safe when you're working on a play that is traumatic or a story that is traumatic and it has triggers in it, like making sure that the company is safe. That became a big thing for me as well.
Yeah, because I guess your plays, especially all the conversations, and you have another effing play about race, and they're quite I guess sometimes sensitive topics because it's about grieving and love and race. So how was that process for you, I guess, from page to stage? How did that work?
All the conversations was really easy because it just felt like I wrote that play. I've changed the title now, so it's called Everything We Wanted to Say. And I wrote that play because, like, as a writer, I didn't feel like I was afforded the space to write plays about love and grief and hope and all of that. And I wanted to do that. And I wanted it to be a diverse cast. And I wanted it to be honest and raw. And so most of it felt like a poem. Some of it felt very personal. And it was just that kind of, it was being allowed to do things that I didn't feel was necessarily granted to me by the industry, because I always felt like, going to theatres or talking to people, that people wanted a certain thing from me. And that, I think that happens with everyone around, like, even if they're actors or musicians or, once you are established in a certain, like, box, people want you to perform that, people want you to make R&B, they don't want you to make jazz,
right?
Do you know what I mean? Because they don't know you for that. And people want you to write plays about race because that's it, so I just wanted to open up and be like, no, actually I don't, and I can't. I can write about the stuff. Another thing, play about race was difficult. I had the idea. The idea was that I wanted to explore what happens when white people don't get what they want. And I was quite, a lot of the things that have happened around Trump or around, white people not getting into spaces they feel like they are like they have a hold on to. The shift around when George Floyd got murdered, the shift around where the industry was going, lots of white people felt like they were being forgotten, or felt like they weren't given access to things because now we had to, like, make it all black. So I wanted to write about that, and I wanted it to be centered around, this group of white friends and somebody who's white passing, to have that conversation. Because I didn't feel necessary that it was right for black people to do that work and to do that labor again. I didn't want my characters to go through that. And I felt like this is, whiteness is something that white people have created. It's a structural, like, thing.
Social construct.
It is. So it's not us to do that unpacking or to do that work. It's actually white people for them to do. And essentially the play is about this guy who goes up to run a theatre in Hackney Wick, and he thinks he's got the job, and he comes back and he gets the call that he hasn't got it. He was in the final round, and the final round was another black woman, and he thinks the reason she's got the job is because, she's black. And it is essentially that. And it's about him, the character, kind of unpacking, questions that he's not dealing with.
Yeah. What was your response to that? Because obviously earlier you talked about your Dear White People at Central and that not necessarily having the response that you would have hoped for. What was your response for this play?
Do you know, it's a really, I feel like, because the play is it's a play within a play. So there's a structure where the characters break up and all of that. Whenever I'm sending the play to venues or, to people to read, there is this interesting thing that happens where it feels like the play itself is no longer just about the play. Like it's, the thing I love about it's a living thing. So it has a living response. So when people turn it down and say, this is not my kind of play, there's something about that goes, what do you mean it's not your kind of play?
Yeah, what do you mean by that? Or
it's like, this is not the kind of thing for our audience. Okay, wow, what do you mean by that?
So who are your audience? People who don't want to learn?
Exactly.
People don't,
Let's unpack that. And what I'm finding is that for a lot of venues, it's something that's really close to home. You know, essentially it's about a white theatre director who doesn't get a gig because he thinks because he's white. And that is very, very close to home to a lot of the people who run the venues in our industry. So it's a difficult one. So that's the interesting thing where I go, okay, cool. This play is a living thing. And that's how kind of white people deal with it. I think remember when we had the showing of it, there's stage directions that were read out, and it was like white people cannot exit the building. You know, in it I wrote something like black people, people of color, all of us, we can leave the theatre at any point if we need to. Like if there are moments where it's becoming too much, and I wrote that white people cannot leave. You have to stay.
Okay.
And what I noticed, so obviously that puts you on edge
as
a white person. But then as a person of colour, it makes you kind of watch and look at who's leaving and who would leave and observe. And so when we had a couple white people leave, it was really interesting. So that was like, oh shit, why are they leaving?
Yeah, and I guess it puts all the attention on it as
well.
It's like, where are you going? What are you doing? Wow.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting concept, actually. And would you say, kind of, if you ever get any resistance to things, does that just make you push harder? Do you say, no, okay, let me try and do more?
Definitely. That's a challenge, because there's a reason why. You know, there's a reason why people say no. There's a reason why people think it doesn't work. So that makes me kind of look and go, why? How can I remember when I got a note from a venue, which I won't name, but they essentially said that we don't necessarily think that the play kind of does what you think it should do. And they said, we don't, because it's about white rage and it's about white people getting angry. And they said, we don't necessarily think that the character, James, has a big moment of like rage. Like he needs to do something, and he needs to, we need to see his rage kind of burst out. And I kept thinking about it for days and weeks in the summer, and I was just like thinking, what does James need to do? And I started rewriting the play so many times to fit this specific narrative for this venue. And at one point I was starting to write that James goes and attacks, Kemi, the black woman who got the job. And then at one point I was like, James gets a knife and starts to attack the white person, passing person. And then it just felt like, this isn't right. Like, this isn't like what the play is. And this isn't what like British like racism is. And what I find about like, British racism is that it's small. It's very much in the nitty gritty, and it's very much in the unsaid. Like what, when somebody says we don't think your play is right for our audience, they're saying something there, but they're not saying it as loud as going, we're not having that black play. Do you know what I mean? Like,
They're
saying in a different way, and I felt like it's unfair for the character James to do this massive explosion.
Yeah, just to validate.
I feel almost then an audience would see that and be like, oh, that's not me then, because
absolutely,
that's such an extreme thing. You're like, oh, but I would never. It's like, no,
this is it.
You see how it actually happens, so that they can see that behaviour in themselves.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
because the stabbing almost makes it,
exactly.
Then you almost wanted it to be that. So
exactly.
The wow factor. I think that's something actually in theatre and in film and TV that they're very guilty for. Trying to have this wow factor so that the audience go, whoa, wow. But actually, as you said, it's just in the mundane. It's sometimes it's the most simple stories. And I always say this about all the conversations. I know you changed the name of it now, but when I first read that play, it's so simple. They're just on the park bench. Everyone goes there. But the conversations they have, it really impacts you, and it is just in the simplicity of it. And it is so gorgeous, and just to be able to see that. So having people kind of demand that you do this big extra wow, it just doesn't make sense, and that's not necessarily what you're trying to put forward. Because then it could come across as you're just saying you hate white people because they do this, and that's not what you're saying.
That's not it. And that's not the story.
No,
and
exactly.
as a writer, you have to go, or as an artist, you have to go back and like, what is it that I'm trying to say? Like, what is it that I want my audience to take away? And what's at the heart of my message? And sometimes, like, feedback is great and it's brilliant to have, but you don't have to take all feedback.
No.
And you know, the moment when you get to kind of shifting you or yourself or what you're making with every feedback that you get, you will kind of leave out with nothing that was left with what you wanted to say. And that's the disappointing thing. So I was like, nah, you know what, I'm not gonna
let me stick to
let me stick to it. Exactly. If it doesn't get on that venue, that's okay. That means it's not where it was meant to be. You know?
How do you work with your own feedback? So as in not feedback that other people give you, just kind of, I guess, writer's block in a way, where you're writing and writing and writing, or you can't write and you think, oh, what am I going to do? How do you work with that?
Before I start writing anything, I start writing like, what is it that I want to tell? And why do I want to tell this story? And I write all the reasons as to why I want to write this story. And whenever I'm like, I have a block, I can't write, I go back to those reasons. Because they're the thing. And if I've got an idea and I can't find enough reasons of why I want to tell this story, I just don't write it. It's as simple as that. Because there's nothing, you know, there's not a lot of the whys that are telling me that I should write this story. So it just feels like it's a story that I kind of don't want to write and I'm not going to be excited by.
That's beautiful that you start with the whys, actually, because then your play has so much meaning.
Yeah, exactly.
What is the writing, like, how long does the writing process take, and like, what is that? So you start with those whys, and then do you like go chronologically, or like, what's your process?
I kind of follow what my heart is saying. Sometimes I start with the beginning because I find that I've got such a vivid way of how I want to start off. And then next bit is then I might write the end. And then the middle bit, it's all about. So with another effing play about race, it was that the beginning and the end were sorted. I knew how that play was going to start, and I knew how it was going to end. It was about finding the journey in the middle and where the characters went. With all the conversations, it was it actually started off with just those two characters, Savannah and Corey, and then I was like, oh, cool. There's actually, like, in a part, there's just more people, so that means there's more characters. That means there's other people that have to come through, right? You can't just watch, you know, two people and their story. There's got to be other people that come through in the park, and that makes that kind of exciting. But yeah, I find if you're struggling as a writer to write, or if you're thinking, should I write? Just write. Like, just write. Just, you know, kind of go with whatever, and don't kind of think about it being perfect. So I always write a crappy draft, because that's what it needs to be. You just need to see holistically how the thing is going to move. And then you can edit and go back and change and shift and, you know, cut off characters. It might be repetitive, or cut lines, and don't be too precious. But yeah, just write. Just do it. You know, I think everyone can write. You know.
Yeah, I think we were even talking about this, like with writing journals and things like that, because I've heard that if you write for 10 minutes a day, then eventually you will just start to come up with material and you will get better and better.
Yeah.
But I started that and then I was like, what am I writing? What is going on here?
Yeah.
So I think that's just me being my own worst critic. But I feel like a lot of people have that problem of just reading it and being like, no, this is
in your head.
terrible.
Yeah.
So how do you overcome that? Do you just write? Do you just do it?
I just write.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, honestly, the first draft of Another Effing Play was so bad. But that's like a writer of mine told me, a writer friend told me that your first draft has to be rubbish.
Yeah.
That's why it's a first draft, right? But you have to get over the fear of writing that and going for it, because you have to just see how the play's gonna move, you know, or how the character's gonna talk. So, just write. Like you don't know unless you do.
So
you know?
true.
Unless you kind of like give yourself to something and do it, and you can stop and start and stop and start. But if you carry on, then
you'll eventually go somewhere.
Yeah.
Do you work more with characters or with themes? I know that's sort of a thing for writers, isn't it? Working with one of them.
I think I start with characters because I'm always interested in like where I put these people and the situation. Always feels for me it's character led, my work. And with it, there's themes, you know. But I think then that comes through of characters. Like if you are building really exciting 3-dimensional characters, the themes of what they're talking about will just come through naturally. You know, we don't go into a room and go, I want to talk about this. You know, we just kind of do and talk about it and happen. So without force feeding my audience, I kind of just let the characters just go for it. So I would start with characters.
Do you ever base characters off of people you know?
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah,
because that's how you have to know your characters.
Oh no, of course. Yeah.
And the more you know them, the better. Like you feel like you've got a point of view from them. You can base them from someone, your mum, your sister, whatever, or somebody you hated. Then you can really go into the specifics about why do you hate them, why do you love them, who are these people, where they're from. You can really build the shape of them more. Sometimes I do.
Have you ever had a situation where someone's realised that you've based it off of them and they've kind of confronted you about it, whether it's a good or bad character? Have you ever had a situation where they're like, oh, yeah, is that me?
I based Corey off my best friend Corey.
Okay. So you didn't want to hide that?
I didn't want to hide it. He came to see it and he was like, that's basically me, innit?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, it is. But yeah, it's a nice thing when like your friends or people like recognize that, because I think stories live forever and they exist. Pages, books live forever, and what a beautiful gift to give somebody than a character who will outlive you. Do you know what I mean? Like,
so true. That's so lovely. Yeah, it's like a gift. I never thought of it like that. That's so lovely.
Sometimes about directing, because I remember you said when you were like in your college course, you were like, want to be an actor, and you were like, now I want to start directing. So we talked a lot about writing, but I was just wondering, how was like going into directing for you? Because obviously writing you've been doing since like you were 6 or 7, but like how about directing? When you kind of first started with that.
Directing when I first started I was a geek at like acting techniques. So I was always reading the books about like how to bring out a character, how to be truthful. I've got so many acting books from my college days. And so I wanted to direct through like being an actor's director, if that makes sense. So a director where actors like know that you know the process of acting and you know like how to bring out that for them, but also you know how to make them feel at ease, to make the best work. And that kind of came through. I did lots of like scratch nights. I did lots of like directing my friends in college just to play, just to experiment. Because as a director, you have to know what you want to do, how you want to do it. Because I don't really believe that people can teach how to direct, because it's about, you know...
It's your own taste.
It's your own taste, right? It's about how you want the story to be told and what lens. All of us can tell, you know, the story Titanic in a different way. All of us can, you know, but that's the way that, what's his name? Cameron David, something like that.
James
Cameron.
I can't even pretend to know.
But that's the way he wanted to. He wanted to tell that story, and you know, Tarantino directing Titanic would be different to that. You know, so it's about how you want to tell the story. And for me, it's always about, you know, creating spaces where my actors feel like they, you know, they're comfortable, they can play, they can experiment. Creating a space that is safe and trusted and feels like, you know, like you can just go from space to space. I always feel like, I always get a bit of like people going, you can't create a family environment because it's a workspace. But I love that we are a family, and I love that we are creating something that we are all passionate. And you know, I believe that there are no hierarchies. It's about collaboration, and it's about all of us pitching in to make this thing.
Definitely.
And when you do that, you just get so many kind of different things that you wasn't expecting as a director. You can come with your thing going, I want this, I want that, I want that, I want that. But sometimes that can be too, you know, rigid, and it doesn't allow your actors to be free.
It's definitely not as fun for an actor, I don't think.
No,
when you just get told, okay, you're doing this and this, because
Exactly.
part of acting is playing. So if you don't have the opportunity to play, then
you can't experiment.
You know,
you can't experiment.
Exactly.
So and then the more I've directed, watched other people. So I assistant directed quite a few times. And there was a point where I was like, I need to stop assistant directing. I think I only assistant directed 3 directors.
Is that how you got into the space of directing?
Yes, it is. When I was at Central, when I was in my second year, I applied for this call out at the Royal Court to direct short little plays. And they were on, you know, for like 15 minutes at the Royal Court, and you know, people came to see them, whatever. It was nothing big. It was like downstairs in the bar area. You know, a director came to see it, Ned Bennett, and then I kind of worked with him as an assistant facilitator for one session, and then he told me he's doing this play at the Orange Tree, and it's about this thing, and he didn't really tell me that. And then he came to see the Royal Court thing, and then we chatted after, and then he told me about it that he's doing. He told me the themes, he told me what it was. It's called An Octoroon, by Brandon Jacob Jenkins, and I thought, yeah, cool, whatever, do it. It was unpaid, and you know, my travel was paid for, and that was it. That was all I cared for. Like, honestly, like, I had student finance. I was all right. Like, I wasn't, do you know what I mean? For me, it was about the experience. For me, it was about working with somebody like Ned in a space like the Orange Tree with that professional play and putting that on my CV. And, you know, obviously the play did really well, and then it transferred at the National, and then all of a sudden, now I'm on a national wage. Like, it was like, you know, like, this was crazy. Like, you know, all of a sudden, like, I'm in, you know, the, you know, artistic director office. Like, this is just like, you know, so like, if I didn't have taken that, you know, free work, like, I wouldn't have gotten to where I've gotten.
Where you were.
Yeah, and that opportunity to learn, you know, because sometimes you just need to learn, and that's okay.
So true,
that you're still benefiting from it in a way, you know. It's an education, like, do you know what I mean? Like, you're still learning, like, it's still money. Do you know what I mean?
Because in the long term it will be money.
Exactly.
Would you always recommend taking a free job then? Because I know a lot of people, it's kind of split, I feel like. Because some people say, yes, get the experience and learn because that's invaluable. But then I suppose for a lot of actors, if they're not getting paid, then where are they getting their money from? Or directors or writers, anyone in the arts. I guess it's hard because there's only so many free jobs you can take before you're like, oh, this is kind of affecting me now. So what would your advice be on that?
I think it depends where you're at. Like, it depends where you're at financially, right? And where you're at industry-wise. At that time, I needed experience. That's, you know, I needed to be in a room that is in a professional context that just wasn't my friends, and I needed to have the thing on my CV, right? I needed that credit. And that is why I did it. You know, it paid for itself in the long run. And some people can be like, no, you should have done this, you should have done that. I don't regret it, because it was, you know, it was a great learning experience. And it taught me a lot as a director. Still that work that that I work with Ned, I still like follow that through now. So it had an impact on how I like run my spaces. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it depends. It depends on where you're at career wise, and like, where do you want to go?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
And what opportunities give you access to that destination? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because sometimes paid stuff doesn't
give you anything.
You know?
Yeah. So with directing, do you ever direct your own plays, or do you feel like your writing self and your directing self would clash too much?
I have done in the past, and I've thought about it, going like, oh, I need to really direct this. The beautiful thing is seeing somebody like take on your vision and like doing things that you didn't expect or didn't write. So that's the good thing, and allowing yourself to let go, which I find sometimes it's really hard as a writer. Exactly.
When you put so much work into it. And actually, I was talking the other day in one of my drama classes, and we were talking about improvising. And with scripts, especially, because I know there's some actors who kind of get a feel for the character. And then they'll go and do kind of whatever. Be like, I've got it. Let me put my own twist on it. How do you feel about that? Because obviously when it's your work, when you've spent so long creating and crafting these characters, and then someone just kind of does what they want. Do you like that? Do you like that they're kind of doing their own thing? Or do you think, no, please stick to the script?
I like, for me as a director, like I love actors who are thinkers.
Okay.
I just love it, because it goes like, you've really thought about how this character exists in a different number of conditions. It doesn't have to be specifically this. You've thought about where this character would have dinner. You've thought about who this character's friends are. And then you have brought that into performing. Like, do you know what I mean? You like inhabited that. So for me, I love that. But there are moments when an actor goes off page, and I go, okay, let's kind of come back.
Let's recenter ourselves.
Why are you doing that? And I think that goes in my rehearsal process. I spent a long time doing the table work, and that table work it gives us it tells us where we can go and where we can't go. Because it just says it's natural for the character to do this, but it's not natural for the character to do that. I don't see this character, for example, going to a betting shop, or I don't see this character going swimming because they feel uncomfortable or scared about water. So there's all those things that you kind of know about and you start to learn. So it gives you space to go, this is where I can go, this is where I can't go. And I have to play around that space. And that's the space you can push and be at. When you start doing all the madness,
random stuff,
it's like, whoa, what's going on here?
I spent time doing this, can we?
We just go back. And some things I see actors do that it's about themselves. It's about
an ego.
It's an ego thing. It's about me looking like the greatest actor.
I want to do this to show my
exactly. I have to do the speech in this way because I have to show all of this. And then that's where I go, oh, that's quite selfish now. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
You haven't thought about
serving the play.
No, it's not serving the play. It's not serving the rest of the other characters. It's actually doing damage to it. So there's a lot of that. And actually, I was talking to a director the other day, and I was saying a lot of what we do is about managing and holding space, but also like managing egos. A lot of directing, you can have your vision, and that vision's fantastic, but there's a lot of like holding space for actors, and like actors who are quite vulnerable. Like I've had the privilege of working with actors who are starting out in their business, and I've had the privilege of working with actors who are BAFTA award winners, and who are at the height of their business. And a lot of them have something in common, which is that they're scared, and there's anxiety with what actors do or performers do, thinking of like, am I good enough, or can I do this? And you just have to hold space and kind of hold them for them to really do what they can do, what is their God-given talent. So a lot of it is just holding that space for people and like going like, and there's always a reason why people are doing that. There's always, I find, especially when I work with older actors, there's always a reason why they want to show that they're the best, or they want to show. It's maybe because in their career they feel like a little bit forgotten, or things are not landing for them now, so they feel like this is the right moment for them to go and show off this. Maybe they've invited casting directors in the space for them to see their work. So there's all of that that's going on in the space. So, this is why I go back to making sure that the environment you create as a director, it feels like a home, or it feels safe.
For sure.
So that your actors can actually say, I'm sorry I'm acting in this way, but it's because of this. And then you can have a discussion and kind of go, I'm really sorry about this. Let's
communication.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
How do you go about like creating that space? Is there like things that you make sure to do when you meet your like new set of actors and stuff, or like?
I check in with my actors.
Okay.
It's a big thing for me.
How are you doing?
It's a big thing for me, and that doesn't change whatever level I work with. Like, I've just finished directing the audio things for Big Finish. So Big Finish do these Doctor Who stories, and I've just finished working with Jodie Whittaker on Big Finish, and we started the morning just saying, how are you? How's everything? You all right? Are we good? Because then as a director, you can kind of go, you can understand if you're not good or whatever. How do we work around that? How do you change the space to accommodate that? You can't just go, let's work.
It's like when you don't know what's going on.
How far can we push today?
Exactly. Somebody can say, I don't feel comfortable exploring that because something has just happened to me this morning. That has impacted that, and I won't do that. And you go, fair enough, absolutely.
Let's change what we're gonna.
So whatever space I'm in, whatever level it's at, it's always a check-in. And it's always like making space for my actors. If they need an extra break, I will say so. If we need to push something or change something around, I will say so. There's I think a lot of, I remember a friend of mine came to like see my rehearsal, and they compared, I don't know if you guys are into football. I saw
have a
little bit. They compared me to Ancelotti at Real Madrid. And
is that a good or bad thing?
No, what he said was Ancelotti is known for managing like big stars, like obviously Real Madrid, biggest club in the world, biggest stars in on the planet, and he just said, what I've observed for you is that you just let your actors do, like you trust them, you put them in this position, you say go in, and then they just play. And he just said, like, you just let them play in that area without holding them back, and I love that, because that's what I want my actors to do. I want them to play and to have fun and to explore and to go where I didn't think was possible.
That's amazing. So what would you say then, in terms of writing, in terms of directing, what do you want to kind of push for more in the future? What are those next steps? I know people hate that question. What are you doing next? But what are your kind of next steps?
I love what I do, but it's not my life.
Okay.
I feel like, somebody said to me, was like, if you are constantly chasing, which I feel like our industry does, like you are constantly chasing the next thing, right? You get into drum school, or you chase getting into drum school, then you get into it, then you chase getting the big part in the final play, then you chase getting an agent, then you chase getting a role in a thing. You chase this and you chase that. Whatever level you are, you never find peace at that, and you're constantly going to be chasing. And I'm making peace with the fact that I love what I do. I love that I do this as a job, and it's a privilege. Not a lot of people can say that they are doing what they've dreamt of doing, and they make a living and they pay their bills or rent from that. Not a lot of people can say that. So I love that, but it's not my life. It's not. It doesn't encompass who I am. Not all of it. That's just the professional side.
Yes.
There's a personal side, and the personal side has got dreams, and you know, I want myself to be doing stuff. Like I've always thought about having a different like thing or hobby and trying to do something outside of it. I took up boxing for a couple of months, and I wanted to do it like competitively and like
trying
enjoying
all
it.
of the different things.
And then I was like, you know what, I can't be fucking arsed.
Yeah,
like
long.
this whole thing.
Can't be fucking arsed. But I keep thinking of like myself being like away from this industry and doing something else and like outside and like pushing in different spaces. I'm really into politics, so there's that like so
I think that's such an admirable thing to admit, because I really believe like in this industry you just spend your life chasing that. It gets to a point you're like, I just have to you're just kind of like, okay, I just have to carry on now because I've set my life to be this way. So it's like, okay, I just have to kind of stick it out. But it's so true that, you know what, there's so much more to life than just chasing that. And I think with other professions, it is your 9 to 5 and then you have another life. With this profession, it is your life. It's everything. So, no, I really love that perspective, actually, that, you know what, I've made it and I've done well, but it's not the end.
And to celebrate yourself. Like, to celebrate yourself in terms of, sometimes that might not be where you want to be. You might have auditioned to go to drama school and you don't get in, but like at least you got somewhere, right? At least you got to the second round or the final round. At least you got the feedback. There is a win in every loss, right? There is something that you can take from it and go, at least I was doing this, or at least I was there, or you know, You never be happy if you're constantly like chasing, or you know, you'll never be satisfied.
It's not a way that you can live a fulfilled life. If you're constantly chasing, you'll never be satisfied. So I guess our final question, which is something that we always love to ask our guests at the end, what would be your biggest advice for aspiring writers, for directors, and just people who want to get into the industry?
Oh, that's a lot. No.
A lot to unpack.
A lot. Find joy. Surround yourself with really good people that you love, that are like family or are family. Be easy on yourself, because I think in this profession we can really be hard on ourselves. And that's what was telling me, there is the unhealthy side of this business where that you are constantly reviewing or constantly telling yourself, or constantly people telling you you're not good, or you know. And I think there needs to be more space to be kinder to ourselves, and to allow ourselves to fail, and to allow ourselves to make mistakes, or not get what we want. So like, don't be hard on yourself. Keep exploring what spaces that you want to be in, and you know, what spaces that you want to take up, or what spaces that you don't want to be in. Follow what's in your heart, because you know, obviously you know best. And just enjoy the ride.
Definitely enjoy the ride for sure, because it is a journey, but it's a beautiful journey.
It is.
It really is.
Honestly, it's a joy. It is a joy what we do, and like, we're not surgeons.
No.
We're not surgeons.
No,
we don't.
A bit too serious all the time. Get to enjoy it.
Literally, the privilege of what we do is we get to play. Whether you're a director, whether you are a designer, whether you are a prop maker, you are playing. You are like seeing, how does this person live here, or how do I make this stage like this, or you know, how do I turn up the lights to this color? You are just a kid playing. So like,
out your inner child.
You are. Do you know what I mean? Like so there's something beautiful in that, and like just play, just you know, go for it.
Amazing. Well, Stephen, thank you so much. I have really loved this. I really enjoyed it. We'll definitely have to get you on another time, because it's been great. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much, you guys, for watching. And we will see you next week on Young and Unscripted. Bye, guys.